So the Redmi Note 11 series has finally launched here in Byyyeeee in a couple of different flavors. You've got the swanky Pro model, otherwise the standard version simply known as the Redmi Note 11. But like the Pro model, this comes packing the latest, freshest MiUI 13 launcher. You've got the Snapdragon 680 chipset providing performance, a mighty 5000 mAh battery, and a 50 megapixel primary camera. And I'm shooting this unboxing video ahead of the official launch of the Redmi Note 11, so I'm not sure on the exact UK pricing just yet. I will update that in the video description below, but it should come in at under 200 quid, so some pretty decent specs for that price. But of course, specs is all well and good, but it's all about the actual experience. So let's whip the Redmi Note 11 on out of the box, take you on a full-on tour of the hardware and the software, and for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! So first up, what do we got in the box? Well, there's one Redmi Note 11 smartphone. You've got yourself a 33 watt adapter, a thrilling bit of USB Type-C cable action. And yes, I love it, you love it. You've got a condom case bundled in there so you can slap that around the Redmi Note 11, keep it safe from harm. Oh, get in there, you Oh, thank God, finally. I beat you! And there is the Redmi Note 11 all wrapped up, nice and safe and sound. Now just gotta get the case off again. And while you don't get a screen protector pre-installed on the Redmi Note 11, you do at least get one bundled in the box. You can chuck that on if you want. And there you have it, that's everything that you get in the box with the phone. So first impressions of the Redmi Note 11 are that it looks and feels very much like your typical budget smartphone. Doesn't really look particularly different to lots of other Redmi Notes from the past. It's 6.43 inches, so not an absolute heifer like some Xiaomi smartphones are, that's for sure. Reasonably compact, though you do have some fairly thick bezel action here down beneath the screen. It's 179 grams, just over 8 millimeters thick, and you've got reasonably flattish edges, but also quite curved corners, so it fits nicely in the hand. Good hand feel, very important. It's your standard polycarbonate rear, as you'd find on all sort of budget smartphones around this sort of price point, and you can grab it in 3 different colors. You've got graphite gray, which is the one that I am rocking. You can also grab it in twilight blue or star blue. So yes, sadly, this is the least exciting version of the Redmi Note 11, unless you happen to really like gray. The branding is quite minimal, which is always good to see, although you do have all this nonsense down here, which kind of ruins the simple, plain aesthetics somewhat. At least the camera chassis is reasonably flush with the surface there. It doesn't jut out too far at all. And no real surprises with the rest of the design. You've got a headphone jack up top, as well as a speaker grill, as you can see there, infrared sensor. Got another speaker grill down below next to the Type-C USB port. And the Redmi Note 11 is IP53 splash resistant, so good news if you live here in the UK, the land of drizzle, as I like to call it. And the display is Gorilla Glass 3 as well, so hopefully it should prove quite scratch resistant, although at least you get that screen protector bundled in the box too. Now the software here on the Redmi Note 11 will not be a shock at all. It is the latest, freshest MiUI 13, although it is still sat on top of Android 11, not the latest version, Android 12. So with every passing iteration of MiUI, it looks and feels more like stock Android. You've got the likes of your Google Discover feed, you've got an apps tray which you can set up as default. You can swipe down from anywhere to access your notifications, but then you've also got those MiUI specials like the control center, which you can drag down from the right side of the screen. This just gives you fast access to all of your main toggles, including a few MiUI specials on there. Ultra Batter, I like the sound of that. That's ultra battery mode, unfortunately nothing to do with deep frying. And if you jump on into the MiUI settings, plenty of extra bonus stuff squirreled away in here that you won't find on just standard Android. So for instance, you've got Xiaomi's always on display, which you can completely customize, and you've got a variety of different sort of themes to choose from. Some of the digital efforts are rather fetching, otherwise you might want something more trippy like a kaleidoscopic effort or a glowing cactus. Unfortunately, Xiaomi still hasn't sorted out its always on display options, in that it can only be displayed for up to 10 seconds after you tap the screen, rather than actually being always on as advertised. That's something you used to be able to get around in the developer settings, but you can't do that anymore, so hopefully they'll sort that out in an update really soon. And the display can also light up in a very eye-pleasing manner just to inform you of when any new messages or whatever have trickled through. You dive on into special features, you'll find some of the best MiUI bonus bits squirreled away in here, including Game Turbo, which I'll definitely show off in a bit when we're touching on performance. You've got the likes of Video Toolbox as well. And the Toolbox features are particularly good if you like listening to an audio book or a video podcast or something like that. On the likes of YouTube, where you don't actually need to be watching the screen. Just pull out that menu and then tap the turn off screen feature, and this will allow you to play the video in the background with the screen hibernating. Great news if you just want to stick the phone in your pocket and enjoy the audio while you're wandering about the place. So there's lots to enjoy with the MiUI launcher and the software experience in general here, but the Redmi Note 11 does come with the usual Xiaomi caveats. For instance, the phone comes absolutely stacked with crapware, so quite a lot of these apps come pre-installed. I've only chucked on a few of my own bits like Deezer and Netflix. Well, stuff like TikTok came pre-installed, so just have to ditch that shit. AliExpress, let's get rid of that. Again, it's a situation that's slowly getting better with each iteration of Xiaomi's Redmi smartphones. There isn't quite as much crap piled on here as there used to be, the likes of Booking.com, or you do still get LinkedIn, unfortunately. But thankfully, most of the stuff that you don't want can just be quickly and easily wiped. And the other thing about Xiaomi smartphones is that they're not usually the fastest around when it comes to software updates, or God even knows when the Redmi Note 11 is going to get a tasty bit of Android 12 action, for instance. And while my review sample supports NFC, apparently that is something that will vary by market as well. So if you want to get your contactless payments on the go, you might want to check Xiaomi's website, the local website for you, to just make sure that your version definitely has it. As for storage, where you got a choice of 64 or 128 gigs of space here on the Redmi Note 11. As you can see, I've got the 64 gig model, and if you yank out that SIM tray as well, you'll see not only do you have space for 2 SIMs at the same time, but you've also got a separate slot for micro SD memory cards up to 1 TB. And on the security side as well, it's an edge-mounted fingerprint sensor built into that power button right there on the side. So a quick tap of your digit, as you can see there, you're straight into your desktops. It is a super quick, super responsive sensor. And if you dive on into the passwords and security section of the settings as well, you'll see the Redmi Note 11 also supports a good bit of face unlock. Always a handy alternative if you've got grubby mitts or you're wearing gloves or something. And again, so far this seems to be a worthy option if for whatever reason you can't use that fingerprint sensor. Now, one of the best bits of the Xiaomi Redmi Note 11 is the fact you've got a 6.43-inch AMOLED display, which is still pretty rare at this sort of price point. Because this is an AMOLED panel, you can expect nice wide viewing angles and really sharp contrast as well. Very deep pitch black blacks. Definitely great stuff if you're using the old dark mode. It's a Full HD Plus resolution panel, 2400 by 1080, so nice crisp visuals as well. And on the default color settings, the output is nice and vivid and punchy and poppy, really good for animation, anime, things like that. But if you want to, you can dive into the display settings on the Redmi Note 11 and change up the color scheme, fiddle around with the color temperature manually, all kinds of stuff. On the top brightness levels, I had absolutely no problems with visibility, even when I had powerful studio lights beaming onto the screen, or if I stepped outside for a moment as well. And the auto brightness seems absolutely fine, not the fastest acting around, but seems to do its job reasonably well. And as you can see, if you dive on into the refresh rate, it is set to 60 Hz by default. We can bump it up to 90 Hz if you like. That will drain the battery a bit faster. There's no dynamic option, unfortunately. So the Redmi Note 11 can't automatically choose whether to stick at 60 Hz or bump it up to 90 Hz if it's plain supported content. And yeah, there's a dinky pinhole selfie camera housed up towards the top end, which does slightly intrude on the action when you go full screen, but it's nothing too bad at all, really. Overall, I'd say if you're a media fan on a tight budget, the Redmi Note 11 definitely a solid option. And on top of that, it even has a stereo speaker setup, as we pointed out before, a speaker grill housed up on the top edge as well as the bottom edge. But is it actually any good? Well, let's find out. The Beats Fit Pro are incredibly stable, some of the best out there for active users. And just to prove how good that fit is, wash test. And you know what, that's actually pretty bloody good for a budget smartphone. I gotta say, I did not expect them to be that decent. Respectable volume once you pump up to the maximum levels, but the quality isn't terrible. You know, usually you'll bump it all the way up and then it'll be really tinny and distorted and just not sound very nice, but that's actually absolutely fine. It'll be fine for just kicking back with a bit of YouTube, if you can't be bothered to plug in any headphones. And yes, you do have that headphone jack if you want to plug in some headphones. Otherwise, you've also got Bluetooth 5.0 support here on the Redmi Note 11, which I tested out this morning. Seems to be absolutely fine for connecting to headphones or speakers. So now let's shift on to performance, and the Redmi Note 11 is powered by the Snapdragon 680 chipset, backed by either 4 or 6 gigs of DDR4 RAM. And this is my first time reviewing a Snapdragon 680 chipset smartphone, and so far, touch wood, the performance has been absolutely fine. Apps load up basically straight away. The MiUI experience seems pretty smooth on the whole. And yeah, I did already run a good bit of Geekbench action on here for any benchmarking enthusiasts. And as you can see, not exactly mind-blowing scores there, that's for sure. 385 single core and 1690 multi-core. Although this is just the 4GB of RAM version of the Redmi Note 11, it's not even the 6GB model, so this is the most base version you can buy. But to really put the Redmi Note 11 to the test as far as performance goes, I thought I'd have a bit of a blast on Call of Duty Mobile, see how it handles a bit of gaming. And I gotta say, I was more than happy with the performance here. You can bump up the graphics to the very good level and have it still playing at a nice, smooth, consistent frame rate. Even when things got proper intense, I didn't see any judders or proper slowdown or anything like that. And the screen felt nice and responsive as well, so I didn't feel like the hardware or anything was holding me back here. Just my usual complete lack of coordination, skill, and reflexes. Still did actually manage to win a game, so there's always that. And the good news is you've got that game turbo feature on board as well, and it's actually been improved significantly as well. It's no longer the bizarre, confusing menu system of before where you just kind of had to guess what everything did. Now everything is clearly labeled and very, very easy to use. And even after gaming for quite a while, the Redmi Note 11 didn't even begin to heat up. That Snapdragon 680 chipset, clearly nice and energy efficient. So no worries if you want to be gaming for a full afternoon or whatever. Of course, there's bugger all 5G support here, so if that's going to be a deal breaker, you're going to have to upgrade to the likes of the Redmi Note 11 Pro instead, which does pack in a bit of 5G. As for the battery, well, 5000 mAh capacity cell crammed inside of the reasonably slender frame of the Redmi Note 11. Certainly when I was gaming, I noticed that percentage didn't drop too much at all. It should certainly see you through a full day on a single charge of this thing, no worries at all, even if you're quite a demanding user. And then when the Redmi Note 11 is fully drained, you've got 33 watt wired charging support. There is a 33 watt adapter bundled in the box. No wireless charging support, of course, though, as you would expect at a budget price point. So let's finish this unboxing of the Redmi Note 11 with a squint at the camera tech. And this is headed up by a 50 megapixel primary camera sensor, but there are 3 other lenses on there, including an 8 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter, 2 megapixel macro shooter, and 2 megapixel depth sensor. So basically the usual bollocks you find on a lot of budget-friendly smartphones. No surprises at all with Xiaomi's camera app. It is the usual feature-packed affair, lots of different toggles and other bits to play around with, as you can see there. You start off in full photo auto mode. You do have an AI option up top as well if you want the Redmi Note 11 just to tweak the photo output a bit to suit whatever content you are shooting. I do tend to leave this knocked off though, as without the AI mode, I found you get more natural looking colors. Not exactly super realistic still, but a bit closer to what you'll see with the naked eye. And in my brief period of testing, the Redmi Note 11 seems absolutely fine for your everyday snaps, although moving subjects like pets and kids will come out blurry, even in quite strong lighting, if they are moving quite quick, so you want them to be as static as possible. Good luck with that. But a respectable amount of details packed into your snaps there. Not too bad in HDR situations either, although in low light the Redmi Note 11 does really struggle, and that night mode does pretty much bugger all, ready to help out, to be perfectly honest. You can quickly and easily swap to the 8 megapixel ultra wide angle shooter like so, and as usual this produces slightly less realistic results, tends to be slightly darker photos as you haven't got quite as wide an aperture. And you've got the usual Pro mode on hand as well if you want full manual controls. So as you can see here, you can shoot up to the full 50 megapixels using this if you like, otherwise stick with the pixel binning. You can play around with the ISO levels, the shutter speed, white balance, all the usual shenanigans. And if you want more bonus modes, if that isn't enough to sate you, well, oh my god, plenty packed away in here as well, including the aforementioned night mode, slow motion, panoramas, all kinds of stuff. And if you want to shoot a bit of home movie action, well, the Redmi Note 11's video chops are quite basic. Again, you can only shoot full HD footage at 30 or 60 frames per second. No 4K option on there. And the video quality is pretty basic stuff, similar to a lot of other budget smartphones, although the audio pickups perfectly decent. Image stabilization, not great though, even though it's only a full HD resolution, so definitely try not to move about too much. And then last stuff, if we swap around to the front-facing camera, it is a 13 megapixel selfie shooter. And again, pretty basic. You do have an HDR option, which you can toggle on or off at the top here. I keep switching it onto automatic, and it keeps seemingly wanting to switch itself off again, so that's a thing. And again, don't exactly expect the moon on a stick here. You'll get fairly low-res selfie shots with it, but it's absolutely fine, even in quite bright conditions. You've got your portrait mode action on there, so yeah, all good. And here on the Redmi Note 11, you can also shoot up to full HD video using that front-facing camera at 30 frames per second.
just shooting this quick, delightful little video just so you can get an idea of how good that mic quality is, as well as the picture quality.
And there you have it. That in a nutshell is the Redmi Note 11, the most basic model of the new Redmi Note 11 series. As I say, available in the UK soon. Not sure on the UK pricing, but definitely check out the video description. It looks like a pretty solid all-round smartphone. Nothing revolutionary, but you know, you got your gorgeous OLED panel on there. You got your stereo speaker setup. Respectable performance, even if you want to do a good bit of gaming on the side. Strong battery life as well. Camera tech, pretty basic, but then no surprises there. So what do you reckon of the Redmi Note 11? Be great to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. Stay tuned for my full in-depth unboxing of the Redmi Note 11 Pro, which hopefully should be coming soon. Various courier wars means that hasn't arrived in time for the launch, unfortunately, but yeah, hopefully soon. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe, ding that notifications bell, and have yourselves a bloody lovely rest of the week. Cheers everyone, love you!